Tonight, will it hook all Maori? The new plan to slice up $700 million in fishing assets.
How a ride home from school ended with their bus down a bank and two teens hailed heroes.
A final wave for Taranaki. Tom Cruise flies out, leaving a province full of movie star memories.
And getting a jump on the rest, the multi-talented team with lofty ambitions.
Good evening. A plan on how to settle the biggest single Waitangi treaty claim has been handed to the government. It's taken 13 years to thrash out ways to carve up $700 million in fishing rights between Māori. But major courtroom battles may still loom. Political reporter Cliff Joyner has the story.
A fishing deal that's been 13 years in the weaving, handed over to the government in a matter of seconds.
I was just extremely relieved that we've got to this point in time after so much time.
Inside the kite, this controversial 300-page report. It recommends exactly how to carve up $700 million worth of Māori fisheries assets.
Improve our prospects in the economic world and in the face of fellow New Zealanders who have become increasingly exasperated as to how long it's taken for us to resolve this issue.
It's taken this long because of scenes like this. Commissioners and lawyers yesterday once more filing into court over the deal. The 11th hour bid to stop today's handover failed, but one of the lawyers involved warns the parties could still head back to the courtroom.
If Parliament, if the Minister still chooses to do nothing, they can come back into court and continue to take their case before the High Court.
My job is to be careful. My job is to be accurate. My job is to be fair. It's not to relitigate the whole deal.
But those representing thousands of urban Māori with no clear tribal affiliation say the deal is still unfair.
It's not impossible to get change from Parliament. You don't have to go down the court process all the time, but we don't rule it out.
It would be naive to imagine that there aren't a few more challenges in front of us. I earnestly hope that they're not of a legal nature and they are more of a parliamentary and a political nature.
It'll be some time yet before Māori are able to claim the fishing resources that this report wants to hand out. The government has promised to move quickly, turning its recommendations into law, but says that may not happen until the end of the year. Cliff Joyner, One News.
Another blow tonight for consumers already struggling to save power. Those in Wellington and Christchurch are about to have less choice on where to buy their electricity. Trustpower has announced it's pulling out of both cities. Our economics correspondent Mike Jaspers joins us now from downtown Wellington. Mike, what's Trustpower's problem?
Well, Trustpower is claiming it's been squeezed out of those cities by the state-owned generators Meridian and Genesis, simply because Trustpower doesn't have access to generation to supply those markets and couldn't get the wholesale electricity contracts at the right price to make those markets profitable at all. Meridian and Genesis could do it at a far lower price. It's really the same problem that afflicted On Energy. You might recall 2 years ago in the last power crisis, they went out of business as a result. That's not going to happen to Trustpower. They still have other markets where they do have power supplies, but it all boils down to the same old problem. We don't have enough power supply this winter. Prices are high. And as for those 32,000 customers of Trustpower, they're going to have to switch to another power company.
Well, Mike, there are still plenty of lights blazing away there behind you. How are we doing with the power savings?
Well, Judy, we are doing a little bit better. 4.5% yesterday, up from 4.1%. Still not where the Winter Power Task Force would like us to be. Well short of that 10% target. I think you're going to see the appeals from the task force really ramped up next week, because clearly the pressure is growing. Unless we change our habits, they're going to have to seriously think about cutting our hot water back severely. Certainly a last resort, but that will happen unless our habits change quickly.
Thanks, Mike. Mike Jaspers from downtown Wellington.
One of Hungary's worst traffic accidents has brought a vow from that country's Prime Minister. He says priority will be given to modernising rail crossings after 33 tourists and their driver were killed when a train slammed into their bus. It happened at Siófok, near the shores of the popular resort of Lake Balaton, about 100 kilometres from the capital, Budapest. Duncan Kennedy reports.
Wrapped around the front of the train, the flattened remains of half a coach. The impact of the crash cut the coach in two. From the air, you can see how far this part of the coach travelled from the road crossing. The wreckage of the other half of the coach lying next to the track. This is the crossing the coach had driven over when it was hit by the train, travelling at 60 miles an hour. One witness said the driver went through a flashing red light, warning of the oncoming express. Emergency services wasted no time getting to this, the worst accident of its kind in Hungary in nearly a quarter of a century. Many of the coach passengers were thrown from the vehicle, one body ending up inside the train.
8 óra 30-kor.
The director of Hungary's disaster committee said the bus pulled out in front of the train. The bus was cut in two, he said. It's been hard to identify the passengers on board. The wreckage has now been prized away, allowing an investigation to start. All the dead and injured were tourists, mostly pensioners from the north of Germany. Tonight, local people have come to register their shock and grief at the accident. A small shrine of candles and notes left near the spot where a simple coach sightseeing tour has ended in disaster.
And a school bus crash here has led to high praise for two teenagers. Their bus plunged down a steep bank near the Waikato town of Te Kuiti, but they stayed calm to lead scared fellow passengers to safety. This from Alex Van Well.
Everything was everywhere. There's people flying and broken glass everywhere, and you just had to hang on. It's not that you could say, nah, stop.
It was a frightening experience for the youngsters on board. The bus was going uphill on a winding stretch when it veered across the road, hit a tree and rolled down a steep bank, only stopping when it hit another tree in its path. But despite the confusion, the boys kept their heads.
I saw the bus driver lying not in a very good state, and I thought I'd better stay with her. And Warren escorted everyone up to the road and called for help, and I stayed with the driver.
The woman driver is still in Waikato Hospital, but in a stable condition. One of the children broke an arm, but the others suffered only cuts and bruises.
The boys obviously made some very good decisions in a very short space of time. We were really proud of them.
This man, who lives nearby, was the first on the scene. He heard the crash from his home.
Amazing. When I looked over and seen everyone, I thought, you know, there's got to be bodies down here somewhere, or someone trapped beneath the bus. But after we got a head count and talking to young Warren Fitzgerald up, he said, no, everyone's intact, everyone's up and walking around.
Parents are relieved no one was badly hurt or killed.